I am so thrilled to introduce Ian McCready with you. I heard him first on a podcast talking about video games, and it was a lot different from the conversations that I had heard around video games and kids. And I'm so pleased that he has agreed to bring this presentation to our Social Rejects Club this month. I hope that you will stick around for the Q&A because we had a lot of great questions submitted. And so, Ian, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you to give the full introduction. And so take it away.
Thank you, Gina. So I want to take everybody here and listening to the recording back in time a little bit. I want to take you back to the Christmas of 1999, because in the Christmas of 1999, I was in fifth grade, I believe, and I got a gift that year that would change the trajectory of my entire life. It was that year at Christmas that I unwrapped a Sony PlayStation. And that same year for Christmas, my best friend down the street, Owen got the Nintendo 64. So between the two of us, we had the very best that gaming hardware in the late 90s could offer you. So if your kids have the great grandparents to these, it may be the Nintendo Switch or the PS5. But if you would have asked me, hey, Ian, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because I continued playing games into middle school and into high school and into college. I was a gamer. I loved video games. And I just want everybody here to know I do have very fond memories playing games growing up. But my dream job was to work at a video game company. Specifically, I wanted to work at a video game company called Blizzard Entertainment. Now, Blizzard Entertainment was it's one of the largest video game companies in the world, and they make games. They're the same company as Activision. They're owned by Microsoft now. So they make games like Candy Crush. They make games like Call of Duty, and they made a game called the World of Warcraft. Now, I started playing the World of Warcraft in college. And in college, when I went off, I was able to live all 4 years on campus and starting to play this freshman year. If you would have checked in on me halfway through sophomore year, you would have found me playing the World of Warcraft 12 to 14 hours a day on the days that I could. And I want you to know why that is. It was because I was kind of a big deal in the World of Warcraft. And I realize you might not think that is possible, but just hear me out on this. In the World of Warcraft, I was one of the top players in my guild, the group of people that I played with. I had pretty much all the top items that you get. I actually had respect. I had clout. I was one of the leaders. I literally taught other people how to play the game. And so, like when I went into the World of Warcraft versus just the hallways of my university, I was somebody. I actually had position. I had ranking versus the other people that were around me. And people would kind of covet the things that I had. Like I knew that they wanted what I had. But there was one thing that I still lacked. It was called benediction. Oh, can you see it there on the screen? That thing is epic. Not just epic, it was legendary. I just want you to know that this really was the pinnacle for someone in the game that I played. There was about 12 million people playing World of Warcraft at the time that I was playing, and only two or three people on the planet had this item. So if I was streaming or if I was, watching, inviting people to watch me play, couldn't do that back then. This was the 2000s. But if I was, they would probably be tuning in to see how I was playing, how I was beating the bosses, what techniques that I would use. It was a big deal for me. The sad part was it didn't even look that cool. That's like a marketing image for it. It looks like this in game, like just if you textbook way to go get a spouse, right? You have that item. That's gonna do it for you. Probably not, but I still wanted this thing. And to get it, it's not easy. To get this staff, you have to beat the ninth dragon. In the heart of a volcano, it's the molten core of Blackrock Mountain. Yes, I was a total nerd. Not ashamed of it anymore. But to beat the ninth dragon, you got to beat eight other dragons, right? To beat those eight dragons, it would take me about a week of playtime where I had to play 5 to 6 nights a week, at least 4 to 5 hours each one of those nights. And like a slot machine at a casino, video games have essentially mastered gambling mechanics because when you beat that ninth dragon, you don't just get the item, right? You get a 3% chance to get the item. So I was clocking in a week at a time just to get a chance, a 3% chance at this item. I was putting in effectively the hours of a full-time job just to try to do one thing. And we beat that dragon many times. Nothing, not a zilch, no item, nothing. But tonight, I know you're excited for me. I can tell. It dropped. We beat the dragon. It was there. It was called Benediction. I could see it on the screen in purple text. That's how you know it's really rare. And my heart was actually racing. My palms were sweaty. I was finally going to arrive into the elite tier of gamers. But no. Someone else in my guild had more DKP than me. DKP is dragon killing points. It's the nerd currency for who gets the next item. It's not important. Someone else got my item. Mine. Are you kidding me? Ugh. And I want you to know that it took me hours to calm down. And finally, after calming down, I woke up and I realized how much of my time and how much of my life I had spent trying to get that utterly meaningless, pixelated goal. And the very next day, I quit the World of Warcraft. And I wish that's where my story with video games ended, but it's not. See, I graduated, I got married, met my wife post World of Warcraft, in case anybody was wondering. And when I was playing video games in my 20s, there was multiple nights, more nights than I care to admit, on a work night where I just couldn't turn off the game, and I pulled all-nighters to my shame. And with my wife, there would be this constant friction, and I still remember her. She did two things that really stuck with me. Once she compared me to basically an alcoholic, and she said, well, at least I know he's not out at the bars. Like, it's just playing video games. But she was saying that in the context of, I don't like that he plays video games as much, but that's how she was speaking to it. And that really stuck with me. And then I still remember her just one night while both of us could be hanging out. And she said, hey, you'd rather play video games tonight, huh? Instead of hang out with her. And the truth was I did. Like, selfishly, I did. It was just what I wanted to do for myself. I wasn't dying to myself. I wasn't saying, hey, what are her needs? I just wanted to zone out and do what I wanted to do. But I didn't think about that in the time. I thought about it in hindsight. And I continued on, and my daughter was born. And we actually have a picture here on the screen. You might think this is me playing another video game. It's not. That is another Blizzard game, one of my favorites, but my daughter is in the picture. She's that little pacifier strapped to my chest. You can see her there in the little ergo wrap. And my wife thought this was funny. You know, I'm making the best of both worlds. Daughter gets a nap. I get to play some video games. Great use of time. But I, not long after that, went up to a men's retreat through my church. And I was up in the mountains of Southern California, where I grew up and where I'm from. And pastor started talking about idolatry and priorities. And I would have told you, like many people or most people will, if you have faith, faith's number one, right? Top priority. Then family, then friends, then work, then school, then like your health and fitness. And then way down below it, all those other things are hobbies, like video games or scrolling Instagram or whatever we do with our free time. But for me, that's not how I was prioritizing my list. And if I was being honest, I had an idol that was video games. And I wasn't ready to admit it till that point, but then I finally thought, you know, maybe I do. And I just want anybody to know, if you think maybe you have an idol of something, it's not black and white maybe, but like it's in the gray, it's definitely there. And I was finally convicted, yes, I have an idol around video games. But now what do I do? What do I do with it? Do I need to just limit them? Do I need how can I actually do something about this? And I had tried to limit video games many times in my life, and I wasn't able to do it. And so I knew I needed to just take a complete break. And so I took a 6-month break from video games. And in those 6 months of video games, people started saying, hey, Ian, I heard you quit video games. Can you talk to my son? Can you meet up with my nephew? Hey, what do we do about my kid on YouTube or Instagram or social media? And that's how self-control was born. But I just want to share with you all as parents, it wasn't just the kids, right? That's who they asked for help on. But then friends started coming to me and say, "Hey, Ian, I'm 35. I got 3 kids. I'm trying to get my master's degree online, and I can't stop playing this stupid mobile game. I've deleted it like 17 times, and I just reinstall it every time I'm stressed. Like I hate it, but I love it at the same time. Like I literally don't know how to have self-control around this." So it's not just the kids. We've all been introduced to addictive technology, and every single person in 2025, whether we're using video games or we're using basically any modern piece of technology or app, we have to build self-control around it, or it will take up as much time as we are willing to give it, which is usually a lot or all of the available time we have. So with that, I want to share with you a few statistics, though, as parents, what the landscape looks like for our kids. Then I'm going to share with you 7 steps that I believe any of us can take to build self-control for ourselves and for our families. And then we're going to have a time of Q&A where, and I already got some questions from Gina that she shared, and we'll go into that. But let's jump into it. I just want to make sure you as parents are equipped to understand how much of an issue this is. And I take these from a few sources. One's from Common Sense Media. They do some annual surveys or some surveys of screen use. Some are from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, and some are from the CDC or just generally like health information. So the first one is the total hours of entertainment screen use per day. Common Sense Media did this report in 2015, then they did it again in 2019 after the pandemic hit. They didn't wait 4 years to do it, they did it in 2 years in 2021. But essentially, there was a huge spike after the pandemic. All of us as parents obviously know that or have experienced that or just understand that that happened. But the numbers didn't come down from here. So the average screen time for a teenager is still pretty high. And I just want a quick poll from us here in the audience. You can maybe raise your hand or use that feature. Who thinks it's the boys or the girls who are spending more time on their devices for entertainment? Anyone who thinks it's the girls? Any guesses on the girls? No guesses. No. Who thinks it's the boys? Yeah, yeah. From experience, I see some hands raised there. It is the boys. So the boys are significantly higher. It's 9 hours, 16 minutes for those teenagers versus 8 hours. Doesn't mean girls are off the hook. That's still a lot of screen time in a day. But I know the main focus of our topic is on video games today. And boys are getting hooked at a higher rate than girls when it comes to video games and it comes to just screen time in general. So uh, they're spending a lot of time on there. That much time is impacting them. So this is numbers from the CDC. This is percentage of youths with a major depressive episode in the past year from 2004 to 2022. The number almost tripled for girls, and the number more than doubled for boys. And this is just what's been reported to hospitals or reported to doctors. So this is having a massive impact on the next generation. If you look at, this is from Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. As kids go off into college, the rates of anxiety and depression have increased by 106 to 134%. So the screen time is affecting them. And Jonathan Haidt was an NYU professor, and he just noticed a certain point in the 2000s, like in between 2010 and 2018, like the kids changed. The kids that were coming into his classroom changed. And he was wondering why that is. So as we look at America in 2025, any guesses from the audience, if you want to just type it in, what percentage of adolescents do you think are addicted to video games? Or even if you want to unmute and guess it or put it in the chat.
I'm anti-chat on Zoom. I'm so sorry. I
I
forgot to
see
take
that.
that.
The chat's not in there.
I
No
know.
worries.
Yeah.
Well,
Anybody, Ashley, you're here. You've got your video on. You're fully committed. What percent?
I'm going to guess 20.
all right. So a little high. Probably feels, yeah, we're at 8.5%, which still is high, just to be clear, because your 20% guess is probably more accurate in the way that this only became the World Health Organization, the WHO, only made video game addiction or online gaming addiction something that you could even be classified with in 2018. So this has only been around for like 20 or for like 7 years. And there is a whole classification of like casual gamer to common gamer to problematic gamer to adolescent or to addicted gamer. And so there's a lot more people in that problematic category. But to be addicted, you have to have some serious negative consequences in your life. You have to be failing school, having failed relationships. Like there's got to be, you got to be stealing, lying, cheating, doing something to fuel your games, even though those negative consequences are hitting you. So that is really concerning that 8.5% of adolescents are meeting that criteria. Because if you look at the rates for adults, it's only 2 to 3%. So kids are getting addicted with the games that they are playing at a much higher rate than adults. What that means in America is there's 3.5 million addicts out of the 42 million adolescents in America. So chances are you do probably know a kid or are parents of a kid who is addicted to video games. I'm not gonna put you on the spot here, Ashley. Percentage of teenagers that would report they feel addicted to their mobile devices from a common sense media. This one's huge. It's 50% of them self-reported that they feel addicted to their mobile devices. It's 21 million kids. That's a huge number. Like I don't even know what to do with that number where they are saying we feel addicted. We feel like we're hopelessly addicted to our mobile devices. I want to just cover one more segment here because this hits adolescents, but I'm sure we have some people in your community where you have kids 0 to 8, or you have kids that are younger. And there was a Common Sense Media report that just came out in February of 2025, and it was looking at the average daily screen time of kids under 2. They're already getting an hour of screen time on average, which I think is probably low because there's a lot of parents who don't give their kids any screen time in this kind of zone or this phase. So there are kids who are getting a lot more than that, even under the age of 2, and 2 to 4, and by 5 to 8, it's already up to 3.5%. Now, what is the device of choice? Kids aren't getting their own phone under 8. So it's the tablet. And the rates at which kids are getting tablets by age 2, this is who own a tablet, meaning they have like their own tablet that is just for them. 40% of kids age 2, and then 68% by age 8, which is pretty crazy. This does mean that, just to really come in alignment with your namesake social rejects, if your kids don't have one, they're going to feel a little bit left out. They're going to feel like, what? Like, why don't I have my own tablet? 7 out of 10 of my friends do. This is why they're like so cheap at this point. It's ridiculous. Usually they're more than this, but like you can get a cheap tablet for 35 bucks or less if you're willing to go on eBay. A lot cheaper than a babysitter, right? Babysitter costs you 2 hours of babysitting costs you more than this. Like, come on. And 2 hours of babysitting isn't enough to go do anything. You're at least getting 3 to 4 hours, or at least I am. I feel like those babysitters make that date night add up. Anyway, parents aren't excited about this. So 75 to 80% of them say that they're somewhat concerned or very concerned about how much time their kids spending on media and what's going on there. So the last thing I just want to share from the statistics here, about 1 in 5 children are using devices for comfort at mealtime or to fall asleep. And I want to just share a story of a guy who came up to me. He was in his 20s, and he said, Ian, it was after an event I did. He said, Ian, I've been falling asleep to video game or to YouTube every night since I can remember. So he started watching YouTube as a kid to fall asleep. He's like, now I can't do it without it. I lay in bed awake. I'm not able to fall asleep unless I watch a little bit of YouTube. And he was basically asking me what to do about it. It's like, I don't know on that off the top of my head on the spot. I just shared to say it is a massive problem. So you all know that. I'm sure Gina shared a lot of this, but I just want to confirm what she's sharing, and just as another external party, like you're not crazy as parents to wonder what's going on here, what do we do, and how important it is to take, I would say, what is going to feel like more advanced measures or tactics or decisions that might make you feel like you're a social reject or out of the norm. So what do we do? Most of the time, so I believe in Jesus. I know that not everybody here is a Christian in the community, but I want to just share with you a verse that comes from the book of Ephesians in the Bible. And it talks about how we spend our time. And it says that we should look carefully then how we walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. And therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. no matter what religion or kind of belief system, like the world all believes in essentially some form of the golden rule, whether it's Islam or Buddhism or Confucianism or Taoism, even atheism believes that you should just not cause harm to other people, right? Let's do whatever you want as long as you don't harm other people. So this concept of using our time well, I think is at the crux of when I talk to young people. Like the goal is to not just get good grades and not get in trouble, and then the rest of your free time is yours. What are you supposed to be doing as a healthy human? Like that's what we should be teaching our kids to do, because that is essentially, I believe, what the will of God is and the will of the Lord is for us, is to use our time wisely. We see it here in Scripture. And it's to use that time to serve others, to be in relationship with other people and bless the other people that we walk around with and interact with every single day. So that kind of serves as a crux, and I just want to serve that as use that as an underpinning to, there should not be an assumption that I just get to use all of my time for me time and on myself. Like I'm put on here to do good deeds and good works and to help serve other people. That's our mission at Self-Control, is to try to help people redeem time from technology for doing the good that God created us to do. So I'm going to do an abbreviated version of these so that we do have time for questions. But I want to just invite you into the 7 steps that I usually share with people so that we can understand how we can build self-control around this. And the first is understanding dopamine and habits and how they form. So all things are lawful for us, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for us, but will not be dominated by anything. It's my hope that none of you or your kids or your parents or your friends ever become dominated by a little black rectangle or a video game or anything like that. But it's happening. So how is it happening? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It helps us form habits, good habits or bad habits. It's known as this feel-good hormone, and it releases in our brain when we enjoy something, and it releases all the time for good things and bad things. And dopamine, though, does not care about our long-term well-being. Doesn't care that our kids want to do well in school, that they want to be good, respectful kids, that they want to have good mental health or well-being, or that we want that for them. Dopamine's just going to fire in the moment and say, did that feel good? And let's remember it for the future. So it's how God made our brains. It happens all the time for positive social interactions, eating good food, laughing. But games can release dopamine too. They release dopamine through winning. It's fun to win a game of basketball in person with your friends. It's going to be also fun to win a game of video games with your friends online, and you're going to get that same dopamine hit as you excel in that arena. But dopamine games also give dopamine out like candy with free items, and it's this stress relief, this kind of a way to escape from the stressors in your life when you jump in, just like a movie or a good book. Video games, the ones that do have this power, it just is this whole world that brings us in, sucks us in, whether it's a story game or a competitive game, and we don't have to think about the stressful things in life. So it kind of acts like this digital ibuprofen or Tylenol. It helps us feel good for a little bit. Apps like YouTube, if it's fun to be entertained in person or hear somebody tell a funny joke, it's going to do that on YouTube, or on TikTok, or on social media. So dopamine, the researchers at Harvard found that dopamine fires when we learn something is enjoyable, but then it fires as we get a cue or we expect to get that thing in the future. So a normal dopamine curve looks like this. These are the researchers at Stanford University. They wanted to put it in a little graph because they wanted to outdo the ones at Harvard. Anyway, you actually get more dopamine when you anticipate the reward than you actually get the reward itself. So as you think about, let's think about our kids walking in at home from school. Their brain will release more dopamine when they think they have some free time, and they'll be like, hey, where can I do something fun today in the next few hours before dinner? Well, my screens are something that I can get some dopamine. And dopamine will actually fire in the brain and release to motivate them toward that behavior, more so than when they actually do the behavior itself. And so in a normal dopamine curve, though, this looks like, think about eating your favorite food. Maybe it's a dish at a favorite restaurant. You anticipate going there, you get excited about going there, and then you eat it, but then the stomach tells the brain it's time to stop. And your body comes back down to this normal baseline level. But games and screens essentially allow you to go on a dopamine roller coaster. They allow you to do what's called a dopamine high. And you just keep going from one game, the game auto cues you to the next perfectly matched game against any people around the globe. You don't even have to, like, it's like Netflix, right? The next episode just starts playing. I wish I could turn that thing off. You can't. In video games, most video games, essentially competitive video games, you just go right to the next level or you queue up for the next one. So you, as the gamer or the user, have to get out of your chair, turn it off. Like, you have to stop it or you'll just stay on the roller coaster. And when you stay on the roller coaster, eventually when you get off, if you stay on it too long, there is a dopamine crash. And this is where, if you actually look at what's happening in people's brains when they get off of one of these dopamine crashes, they're more grumpy and irritable for 10 to 15 minutes while their brain resets. Their brain is looking for high hits of dopamine, and it's like, hey, get off of there, come do some chores or come to dinner or just come hang out with the family. And the kid's like, no, I'm getting high hits of dopamine. I'm having the time of my life over here. And they turn into little gremlins for a little while, right? Like, and they're rude and like, whose kid is this? It's probably my spouse's. It's my spouse's kid. This is their behavior. I see it happening right here. That crash hits. But I do just want you to understand, as parents, what can happen is if you do, and this doesn't happen after a healthy use of video games. It doesn't happen after one time of binging Netflix too long. But if your child starts playing games and builds a pattern around this on their life, they can actually affect their level of dopamine in the brain and form a new lower level of baseline dopamine. And what that means is I talk with and I engage with kids who are fully addicted. And when you think of, like, when I engage with like an 11 or 12-year-old, they don't want to get out of bed. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to even hang out or interact with their siblings or their parents. They don't want to do anything except go back to their devices that will release dopamine for them. And when you talk to a certified addictions therapist, I showed him this graph and he was like, no, Ian, the base level should be actually even lower. He's like, when we deal with addicts and in the studies that he's found, the brain releases 30 to 50% less dopamine for anything that's not the thing that you got hooked on. So if your child seems less motivated, they actually are. Like, dopamine is not releasing and motivating them to take actions for other things besides their screen or device. Like, this is what's happening in their brain. And to really just hammer this home, the dopamine roller coaster is never 3 ups and downs. It looks like this, right? Like when we're kids play for hours or we scroll for hours, like eventually you want to get off the roller coaster. And I have kids tell me, they're like, like, I don't want to fall behind or forget to do my homework or do these things, but like I just do. And they just stay on this roller coaster and they don't know how to get off because it's not easy to get off. And so I do just want to hit specifically on a few tactics that I believe are predatory, that I want you all to know about video game makers and video games today that weren't present on the video games that I grew up with, right? The video games that I grew up with weren't really enough to get me hooked until I got into university or into college. And like the game started introducing some of these mechanics. So I just want to hit on a few things so that you know about this with the games that your kids are playing. So games like Fortnite or League of Legends or Call of Duty or FIFA, these are some of the screenshots that I have. They essentially most of the modern games introduce essentially FOMO, or fear of missing out, and daily rewards. So your kid is encouraged to log in daily for a week, if not every single day of the month. And they will get increasingly better rewards if they just log in every single day. Most of the time, this also includes if you play one game and win one game. So they want to go play their daily game and then they lose. And they're like, oh, well, I got to play another one to get my win. Well, turns out today's bonus is if you win 2 games, you get an extra bonus. So now they're playing 5 games just because they're going to get some bonus of points that they can spend on things, etc. Like I think of my nephew and he was like, Uncle Ian, I have to play this weekend. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have to play NBA 2K this weekend. He's like, well, I only get this exclusive jersey if I play this weekend. I'm like, okay, that jersey means more to you than your family. And he's like, no, anyway. They put in these FOMO and daily rewards. One of the other things is declining ranks. So when I was playing games, you would have like 3 ranks, maybe 5 ranks of like where you were at compared to all the other people who played the game. Fortnite, this is a screenshot of their ranks, and most other modern games have like 18 ranks. Because what they found is, and when I talk to young people, they'll tell me, I'm like, hey, what game do you play? This happened literally last week. I was at John Brown University talking to 1,000 students. One of them comes up to me after, and they tell me about what game they're playing. And then they kind of like, I'm S tier. I'm like, I don't know what S tier is in the specific game you're playing, but they say it like it's this status symbol. Their rank starts to become part of their identity. And the problem with that is it auto declines, meaning they just like the game doesn't actually, if you win a certain number of games, you get a rank, right? And that rank should stay there. Your number of points should still be there. But what they do is if you don't play, even though you're not losing games, you're just not playing. So they take points off your rank. And they basically optimize for people who are playing today. And those people who are playing more often, like you always have to play to keep your rank high. And so kids will feel like they're trapped because they need to keep up with a rank to keep up basically their view and opinion of how good they are or how good they are amongst their friends. One of the other things here is video games totally, like there was a presentation from a video game maker at a games conference of how to make good games, and he titled it The 7 Deadly Sins. And he basically said, here's how you leverage people's weaknesses to make addictive and engaging games. So he was teaching this. It was the maker, it was Ubisoft, the maker of Assassin's Creed and some other very large games. But basically, games have introduced things to play to males specifically, but also to a female, but this hits more with boys, to their ego, right? So the games that I grew up playing with, you won the game, but just you knew who won because you were playing the game. Now, as the game wraps up, they show you who's number one, and that character gets to do a little dance, and you get to pick that character's dance. They make you feel amazing because they like put it up online, and on this bottom example, they replay your best play from the game. And you get a huge hit of dopamine when everyone who played the game knows that you were the best and you made that amazing play. So it really plays to the ego. And that last one, that character down there, if that makes you a little uncomfortable because it's a awkwardly dressed female character, the last one is sexuality. And predatory game tactics, I'm not showing you a bunch of tactics or a bunch of screenshots because it's not appropriate. A lot of the game characters are inappropriate, especially for young boys. So what I'm showing you here is, this is when I talk with young people, this is how you hide an app on your iPhone, or this is how you hide an app in your Steam library if your kid plays games on the computer. So you can hide an app, any app, by just hovering down. You can try this if you have an iPhone after we do this. And you can essentially, and I talk with kids and they hide the games that they know they're not supposed to play on their phone. So they go and they basically hover over, and you just hit hide and require Face ID. Or first, that screenshot on the left, you hit require Face ID, and then you have the option to hide. And then you're like, well, where do those go? If you scroll all the way over to the right on your phone, you'll essentially see your app library. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of your library, you'll see hidden. And if you click on hidden, it's going to require Face ID, and then it will actually show you those apps. So kids are basically hiding those apps from their parents in this kind of, you can go check this out for Android if your kid has an Android or once they get a phone, but this is common. And kids teach other kids how to do this. All right, I just want to take a deep breath because that seems like a lot, and I'm just going to hit on one more piece that is going to be a bit uncomfortable. We have to remove the plank. So Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount talks about first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck out of your brother's eye. And I saw some of the comments from Gina, and I know that like our own tech use is a concern, or our spouse's tech use is a concern. And this is very common. So I just want to share that it is very common. And this has become one of the biggest friction points between spouses, I feel like, and who I talk to, in terms of differing approaches on how many video games or how many hours or what do we allow, what's okay, are we going to let our kids on social media? It's not a big deal, they're going to be left out, what is it? So getting on the same page there, and then on the same page as our grandparents as well. That's been a huge point for me, and we've talked to my in-laws multiple times about how many videos and how many movies the kids get, and it just doesn't stick. So anyway, we need to model this behavior because congratulations, ladies, you are beating the men on how much adult daily screen time we spend by a few minutes. But at age 45, the men get wise and we beat you by 4 minutes. So good job, guys. That much screen time. It's not surprising to me if we pull back up the teenager screen time. On average, kids see this modeled by adults, but not just by adults, by other adults, not by their parents, but by other adults. So the kids see it, the adults spending 6 to 7 hours on average. It's no surprise to me that the teenagers outshot us a little bit. And just to be clear, this is affecting us and our peers too. This is from Jonathan Haidt's book as well. If you go past the undergraduate rate, ages 26 to 34, there's still 111% increase in anxiety. There's still a 49% increase in anxiety for ages 35 to 49. My guess is that most of the people watching this fall somewhere in those two categories. If we are using devices, there is a high chance that we ourselves are experiencing a higher rate of anxiety. So everything that I'm going to share applies to us as well. So how do we create an environment for success? I'm going to run through these last 4 points very quickly because I want to address some of your questions. But I just want to give you permission. You don't control the child, but you do control the environment. And there's a book I love called Revolutionary Parenting by George Barna, and it encourages parents to get involved in their children's friends groups and obliterate obstacles to their faith. Like that is the two main takeaways in this book, where they basically look at well-adjusted kids who are following in their parents' footsteps in faith, and what did the parents do? And I just want to share a quick story of a mom in our area that came to an event, and she shared her story with me after, where she basically said, very well-adjusted daughter, 7 years old, she gives her an old iPhone. Now, don't judge her. It was disconnected from the internet. She only let YouTube Kids, like she put all the things that she thought she was supposed to do. And by age 11, the daughter was having major issues, and she was having thoughts of harming herself, and the mom was beside herself. And they felt like they put everything in place. Like they adjusted, and every time they had issues, they took it away and then they reintroduced it later. But they found out the daughter was sneaking it into her room and watching YouTube Kids from 1 to 4 a.m. as many nights as she could. And the mom finally went out to the garage. She grabbed a sledgehammer and she walked inside and she no, she did not slam the iPhone. She handed the sledgehammer to her 11-year-old daughter. And she said, can't you see what it's doing? Don't you see what this has caused in your life? Do you want that to keep happening? Can you remove this? And the 11-year-old smashed the iPhone with a sledgehammer. And she said it took a few months, but her daughter started to come back. Her fun-loving, joyful daughter started to come back. And that is what any professional therapist or counselor or doctor in the addiction space will tell you. If you're trying to remove something that is an addiction, you have to remove it entirely for 2 to 3 months. It's not going to be easy, but that is the amount of time that it takes for the brain to reset its dopamine levels, to realize and kind of rewire and say, I'm going to get good hits of dopamine, but from these other activities, it's not going to be as high as what I was getting, but it takes that amount of time to reset. And then you can even talk about whether or not we're reintroducing this in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So I just want to share that, because if our right eye is causing us to sin, tear it out and throw it away, for it's better than us to lose one of our members than our whole body be thrown into hell. That is a quote from Jesus in the Bible, and he's not talking about actually ripping out your right eye. He's talking about things that are causing us problems, like get rid of it. And I want to give you permission as parents to get rid of it. Like I hear a lot of parents say, like, well, I opened the can of worms, I can't put them back in the box, all these things. Yes, you can. You can completely remove it. You do have to expect it to be difficult. You do have to expect to be there every single day to talk about it and hear the complaints and work through that. And the complaints will go on for weeks, if not months, while they're dealing with it. But I want to just share with you, the parents, I talk to the kids who are made to wait, or even have it removed from them for a little while and made to wait. And they tell me pretty consistently, they say, it sucked. I didn't like it, but I'm glad my parents did it. And sometimes that takes a while, right? They're like, I wasn't saying that at the time, but at 19, I'm talking to this kid. At 21, I'm talking to this kid. and they say, I got to watch what it did to all of my friends and my peers. And I got to witness firsthand how it was affecting them. And so when I did finally get on it, I made sure I was self-controlled on it. I made sure I used it carefully. So it gives them this opportunity to watch what's going on with all the kids around them. There's a lot of advice on like, hey, what's the perfect age to introduce this or that? That's a really hard question, and we can give you kind of recommendations on general ages for video games or phones. But ultimately, like later than their peers is what I typically recommend, so that they get to see this and they get to see how it affects. And then, but you got to be ready to talk to them about it. So I share this oftentimes because when we think about our kids, we think about them as addicts or nothing else. Addicts don't become addicts overnight. They have bad habits that turn into addictions. An addiction is literally just something we do habitually. It could be anything to our detriment, to our downfall. And we can turn those bad habits, anyone can turn a bad habit into a good habit. We can change our habits around technology. And sometimes I think about the ultimate of good habits as Navy SEALs, like super focused on their diet, exercise, everything is perfected to achieve their mission. But with that, addiction is more serious than most parents. Like a lot of times kids say, yeah, my kid's an addict. Look, it has to be severely interfering with work or school or extracurriculars. They need to be lying, stealing. They need to be doing it over things that they would typically enjoy. A lot of times, if they tell you they want to stop and they can't do it, that's a good indication that they have at least a bad habit around this, if not an addiction. But I want to just share with you, the opposite of addiction is not Navy SEALs, it's connection, connection with other people. It's relationships. It's a reason to get out of the bed in the morning. It's like, I want to go spend time with people that I care about, that I like. If you look at any sort of addiction treatment plan or program, it always involves group therapy and other people. It's not just do it on your own or follow these steps by yourself. So that connection and looking for those social connections for your kid and making sure you're optimizing for those is super important. But ultimately, friends are going to let people down. So for me, I believe that the ultimate habit, end of that habit spectrum, is following Jesus Christ and the example that God gives us in the Bible of what perfect habits look like and how to love other people. So I just share that as an example here. I'm going to skip past this one just in the interest of time. I basically talk about how we need to, from birth, give our kids a increasing level of responsibility as they grow up. We need to just work on giving them more and more responsibility. And I share this because I think in 2025, we expect a lot less out of our 18-year-olds than the kids that were going off to war in our parents' generation did. Like, we expect them to not really be full functioning adults by 18. They should be full functioning adults by 18. Like, we shouldn't be doing like most of the things in their life for them. They should know how to do it on their own. So these last few steps, visibility is needed. The amount of parents at this point that I have talked to who give devices to their kids and then find out that their kids, through basically their kids being zombies the next day, were sneaking it in the middle of the night, is every event that I go speak at. I go speak, and then at least one of the parents comes up to me after or raises their hand during, yeah, we found our kid in the middle of the night watching YouTube. We found our kid in the middle of the night playing games. Like, you have to understand how your devices are being used. There's a lot of tools on the internet. Gina can help you on this, I'm sure, and trying to understand how to set up in the devices that you have. It's way too much to go into all the different router settings and all the things that basically you can do to find out how your kids are accessing the internet or accessing devices. But like the simple version is, whatever the device is, type in parental controls and try to explore it and make sure you have visibility of when it's being used. But all that visibility is not so that you can yell at your kid and kind of tell them they screwed up when it happens, when they mess up. It's so that you can be ready for the crucial conversations. Like, this is parenting. Parenting is finding out and helping your kid course correct and figure out that life is not easy and they're going to bump up and they're going to try, even though you give them all the advice in the world, they're going to still try to learn some things the hard way. And then when they do, you say, awesome. Because when they fail, that's when you can say, hey, do you see how it's impacting you? Do you see why I wanted this for you, or why we do need to build self-control around the screen that we have? So being ready for those crucial conversations, but the goal of those crucial conversations is not just to make sure that they do well in school and that they don't get in trouble and they don't mess things up, or that they don't become depressed and even have poor mental health. I think the goal of those crucial conversations is to develop character. It's to develop the character that you want to see in your child. And I talk to a lot of parents, and most parents would say, hey, I want my son or daughter to have the fruits of the spirit. I want them to have self-control, patience, peace, kindness. But most of the time when you get to graduation, you hear a mom or dad say, they aced all their AP exams and got into the school they wanted. I'm so proud of them. But I just want to imagine instead, what if it's, hey, she truly loves the Lord and her friends and family. I can see it in how she treats us. I'm so proud of her. This is just a reminder that we, no matter what we believe, are parenting for character. We're parenting to create a human that knows how to go walk out and enter into the world. And the last thing I want to share with you before Q&A, you got to expect it to be hard. I know you know this, like of any group that I've talked to. I feel like this group is like on this trend and knows this, that it's going to be difficult. But we have an enemy in this, and man, I believe that the internet is just the devil's playground. Like it is a brutal place. But even the culture is going to push you back towards this. Even your in-laws are going to push you back towards this. Like the universe seems to be conspiring to just pull us all into like media is okay, it's fine, just don't use it in the wrong way. You got to expect resistance on here. And in my own life, I got a call from a buddy of mine 6 months after quitting video games, and he invited me to come interview at his company. And I said, absolutely, I'm going to come interview there. And I went and I got a job offer at Blizzard Entertainment. My literal childhood dream job, to make video games or promote the video games of the biggest video game company, and all the games that I played growing up. Like I checked their job site hundreds of times. My wife was proud of me. She said, like, this is what you've always wanted. I'm so proud of you. Awesome job. You worked hard. They reached out to you. This is incredible. My friends were excited because they were going to get free games and get to go to cool events. Like, oh, but I just quit video games. Like, are you kidding me? I feel like I'm helping mentor people away from them and saying, hey, there actually is a dark side here. You can get addicted. It can be dangerous. So I turned down my dream job offer at Blizzard because I'd rather be here with you all, sharing that as fun as video games are, as fun as social media can be, as fun as it all, what technology has to offer, man, it can be dangerous. It can be so dangerous. And if we don't build self-control, it can consume and take over so much of our lives if we're not looking carefully how we walk and making sure we're going to be wise and not unwise.
Thank you so much. So valuable and encouraging and convicting all at the same time. So thank you so much for your time today, Ian. We have a great Q&A. I do want to honor those of you who were able to come live by getting to your questions. If you do have some, I'm sure that they're probably similar to what was submitted. And so if you do have a question, even if your video is not on, just click that raise hand button, and I'll call on you here in our order, and we'll get to as many as we can. Just before Q&A, I want to share a couple of things, starting with what our free event next month in May is going to be. Harrison Haynes is a 21-year-old who lives in Virginia. You may have heard of him. His story has been shared all over, from Good Morning America to some other places, but he essentially, when he was 12 years old, was given a smartphone, which is kind of late when it comes to his generation. He played video games. He was groomed by a 19-year-old when he was 12 through a video game, because we know these kids can play with people they don't know. And this stranger introduced him to pornography and self-harm. He has overcome so much, including a porn addiction. He now advocates to Congress. He's in Virginia at James Madison University. He's going to get into a lot of the laws with us around why we need protection for our kids at the federal level and what we can do as parents until we have that. And so I'm very excited to hear from him. I hope you will subscribe to the Social Rejects emails because that's really the best way to hear about those. We are also opening up our summer session right now. Today's the first day that it is open. We did max out for our spring session. And so if you want to take advantage, you would be in a group class for 8 weeks where you'll get a printable workbook that helps you take notes. I put a little pencil on the slides where you need to fill in the blank. I make it really easy to follow along. You're in a community with other parents. There are couples, there are single people, there are blended families, there are friends groups who get together and stream the class and then have their discussions in person. But you get this kind of temporary community of support that allows you to have accountability and discussion and idea sharing. It's really kind of magical. And then you also get a lifetime access to online resources that you use to take action right then and there before the next week's class. You're kind of held accountable to going like, okay, we did it, we tried it, and here's how it went. So whether you are trying to make plans in advance of your kids getting to a certain age, or you're trying to retrack, take a step back and kind of figure out how to change course, we can help you. We cover everything from smartphones to video games to school devices, everything you can imagine. And so if you do have questions, raise your hand. I'm going to go ahead and ask some of the ones that were submitted, Ian. So the first one is, how do you, Ian, backtrack? How do you suggest backtracking once the door has been opened? I know you kind of mentioned that, but what do you suggest for parents who are like, gosh, it is, a lot of the people who submitted questions said, without making the world come crashing down or without disrupting the peace. Is that even possible, or should we just take it and go? What do you think?
So I think two things to that are important. One is understanding what we talked about with the dopamine crash and kind of withdrawal symptoms. And your kid is going to be anywhere in a spectrum right there on how much that's going to affect them, but it probably affect them at least a little bit. So yeah, you're not going to expect it to be peacefully perfect. But the other thing is identifying, what are we doing instead? Like, what if you're taking that out there, like work with them to identify activities that they're going to do instead with that time, and even be willing to kind of stand in the gap with them for the maybe weeks or months that you're adjusting that, and put some fun in it. Like let's go do some fun things. Let's go do some fun things that we know we like, and try to be a bit more intentional during that time period, and make it fun. But you can't just rip it away and expect them to sit there kind of miserably until they kind of find other things to do. I do think it's best to be very intentional that time, but also be ready for those crucial conversations and be ready to say like, hey, do you see how angry you're getting with me over the game? Like, be ready to help them identify their feelings during that time, because they're going to have some feelings, and be ready to talk through like, this is why. And it's probably going to feel like you're insane and they're not getting it, etc. But like, I do think it's important to just help them realize, because I have talked to the young men, like 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and they don't like that they yell, that they blow up at their parents. Like, they don't like it when they're talking about it after the fact. So they can recognize bad behavior in hindsight, and they can recognize, and maybe aren't willing to admit to you as a parent, but they've been willing to admit to me that like, yeah, this is a problem.
So I know that a lot of gaming is fun and social. And, when we observe it, sometimes we're like, I mean, this can't be so bad, right? And I had a question from my own husband, who has two friends who are in their 40s, like late 30s, early 40s, who are big gamers. They game together, they game with the same group of friends, and they are highly successful, creative, full of relationships in their lives. What would you say about hearing stories like that? Like, okay, well, I have these friends, they're older adults, they game well without it taking over their life. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, a few things there. Not everybody gets addicted, right? Like we talked about 8.5%. We talked about 2 to 3% for adults. What I have experienced in my own life is that things like this, screens, video games, they don't wreck your life, right? It can kind of be a bad habit if it gets out of hand, but it usually just cheapens the quality of your relationships is the biggest thing that I've noticed. It affects relationships. And then the other thing most adults are willing to sacrifice and kids are willing to sacrifice is sleep. And you can kind of just get by, but over time, the lack of sleep compounds. Now, in your example there, Gina, they might not be, they have built a community around games. Like like it is possible. I'm not, and we don't at self-control teach, never use any technology ever. It's all just bad. It can be used with self-control in moderation. Now, for me, I have not gone back to games, but I was an addict. So when I've tried to go back to games like once or twice over the 8 years that because I was like, hey, I've never even played Fortnite, right? Like I gotta know what the kids are. And then the third night in a row, me playing Fortnite, I was like, what you doing? What's going on there? I'm like, oh, I gotta get a little more research. Like this game's fun. Like I found myself going right into the same patterns of like, I gotta delete Fortnite. Why am I still playing Fortnite? And so, but while I was playing, I was like, hey, maybe I can introduce this. And now I can start playing Fortnite in a healthy way. But I built those patterns in my brain where I just go right back into my old patterns and ruts. So for me, I needed to take a full break. But that doesn't mean that everybody who is a casual gamer or does it is in trouble. So one of the recurring questions, we saw this in a couple of the questions from people, was how do you get everyone on the same page? My spouse, grandparents, just the family in general. Maybe we're not going to get on the same page as the kids as easily, but I want to start with the spouse first, because I think this is one of the most difficult ones. Getting your spouse on the same page, especially if they're a gamer, you have to recognize that if you're coming at them and saying, hey, the rules should be different for our kids, this is problematic behavior for them, I don't like what it's doing, you're essentially talking to them and their character and the decisions that they're making. The natural response for anyone in that circumstance is to become defensive. And they'll probably actually swing the other way and say, you know what, it's not a problem for the kids at all. And it's not going to be an issue because that means it would be an issue for me. And in that instance, you're not having a conversation with your kids, right? You're having a conversation with your spouse. And I think the conversation there is, hey, so I do think this is an issue. What do you think is a good, healthy amount of screen time or video game time for our kids on the weeknights, on the weekends? Try to be very specific and then say, and like, what do we think? What do you like when they're older? How much time do you think that they should be spending? And then that does kind of become a conversation of, well, for them and as an adult, how much time do they think is a good amount of time to spend? And depending on their answer, you may disagree or agree. And if you disagree, that's where you can share your heart on it. And you can share, hey, this is what I see happening. And this is the concern that I have. And I love you and I love our kids and I want them to develop healthy, positive relationships. One of the best ways that I've seen anyone go about doing this and getting on alignment of their same page is going to a conference or a separate entity. So social rejects and going through their summer session might be a perfect opportunity for you to go through it together, hear a third party kind of speak into this area, and then they get to react to that instead of you just bringing the information to them. So I'd highly encourage that as maybe a follow-up step of seeing if they're interested in doing that or going to that. Let's switch to grandparents. So grandparents, and I don't know any easy hack or easy way around this. It's usually a difficult conversation. I do think it's the same type of thing. Trying to get them third-party information, trying to share with them. If they are a reader, ask them, like plead with them, say, buy it for them. Read Anxious Generation. Like I read this and it's totally changed my perspective on how we work with our kids, or share with them another video or something that Gina has shared with you that totally changed your perspective and say, hey, I want you to watch this. Like, please watch it and let's have a conversation with about it. And that can form as a basis where you say, here's why we have the rules in place that we do. I don't know any other way around it. Like grandparents seem to need to kind of find this information on their own and change their opinion about it themselves before they're really gonna maybe change the behavior on how many movies or how much screen time or video games that they let the kids have when they're at their house. Right? It's very easy to become the hero. And grandparents, this has been an issue. Grandparents were like, hey, kid, like you have candy. You love grandpa and grandma. Please come hang out with me. And I don't have to parent you anymore. Right? This has been an age-old issue for grandparents wanting to just befriend and be loved by their grandkids and not feeling as bad about and not experiencing the negative circumstances when they let the kids overindulge. So it's not easy, but that is how I believe you can get on the same page. So one of the next questions is how can I have some video game time without it becoming the center of attention? And on this, I do think this aligns with just kind of the question of like, hey, one of the other questions I got was what does healthy boundaries look like for a 10-year-old with a Switch? Or what do healthy boundaries look like? We have kind of these rules in place. What do those look like? The most healthy boundaries that I've seen and experienced myself is 1 to 2 days a week where you have specific times that you let kids play. And that changes as they get older and older. They do get more responsibility as they go into their teenage years. But when they're 12 or under, you set the rules. And by letting it only be a day or two a week, one of the things that I've found in my own family life and when I've talked to parents, you just shut it down. Like the kid knows they don't get video games outside of Friday or outside of Saturday or whatever day it is or those specific times. And so it becomes less of an issue on the other days of the week where you can just kind of point to that. Now, if you're having issues with your kid just being obsessed over it or always wanting to think about it or wishing they could play more, I do think that you got to understand it's something they enjoy. If all their peers are on it, it's going to be something of interest to them. So I would encourage you to keep holding the line there, but expect it to be a bit of a friction point. And again, look for times to have crucial conversations with them about it. And seek to educate them on some of the things that we talked about in our webinar. Seek to share with them, like, this is why I'm doing it. I love you and I see these dangers. And do you see these happening in your friends' lives? And they might say yes, they might say no, depending on how old they are. And they're like, well, let's keep watching as your friends grow up. And like, I don't like how that's causing problems in their life. And when I talk to other friends' parents, when their kids are playing those games, they are more disrespectful or whatever it may be, where you can help explain the why of why you have those rules in place. But having 1 to 2 days a week, those are the days where we get video games, and then you're just bored the other 5 to 6 days a week is the best thing that I've seen in place in those younger years where the kids just do and are forced to learn those other habits and build those other hobbies and interests. But it is important to give them more increasing responsibility into their teenage years and then walk through it with them. When it starts to become a problem, you got to be there alongside them and say, hey, do you see what's going on? What do you think is a healthy boundary around how much you should get to play with video games? And as they grow up and they age, they need to be able to make their own rules. And if they say something outrageous, like I should be able to play 8 hours a game of video game. So you just say, hey, what would that actually look like in your life? And you get them to share, well, I wouldn't have time to do homework. Well, I wouldn't have time to be a part of this family. I'll, like, try to walk through them, like what that actually means and have them verbalize it in their own words. I have a question here on, hey, is it an issue just anything on the competitiveness of video games and being a sore loser? That is not unique to video games. Kids have been sore losers in board games, in soccer games, in whatever it is. Like, that is just an opportunity for you to parent. And I don't think there's anything unique about video games other than the fact that they also give you that opportunity to intervene and help a kid work through the feelings that they're feeling when they've lost or they're being a sore loser. One of the questions, did I have any restrictions growing up? I did when my parents first introduced a computer game to us. It was SimCity on old Gateway PC in like the early 90s. And we had 1 hour a day for a little while, and it was 1 day a week. So it was like on a Saturday, we got 1 hour. And what would end up happening is there was three of us as siblings. We would all sit there for 3 hours straight and watch the other two siblings play their hour. And so my parents then adjusted the rule even more. Like the kids who aren't playing have to go do something else. And so yeah, those rules eventually just wound down and wore off though, because again, in my house growing up, if you got good grades and you didn't get in trouble, which all three of us got good grades and didn't get in trouble, they just kind of started letting the rules slip. I got straight A's, so if I got straight A's, it wasn't a problem. And that did mean that I was just playing video games more and more, and I was kind of withdrawing more and more, but it didn't really cause an issue until I went off into university. But yes, I do think my parents, if they were paying more attention there, would have, they didn't know. They didn't know that it was going to be a problem. But by the end of high school, I had no rules around video games and it was all up to me. And That was a big thing that my dad did push, though, is I had independence to make decisions, and we had a lot of conversations about what I did with my own independence. So that's what I had growing up. Kids are playing at their friends' houses. How do you help build relationships that are not based on a screen? I know that this is a big concern, and I don't know any other way than with friends who have kids and they have different screen time rules at their house to have a straightforward conversation with them. And I don't think it's fair to the person who you're sending your kid over to say, these are the demands. I don't want my kid playing video games at your house. Like, you can't, I don't think it's appropriate to go into there, but you can make requests and you can say, hey, we have rules around video games at our house. Is it okay if the kids aren't allowed to play more than an hour? Like, I would lead with basically making the request. And most other parents will say, yeah, that's fine. They may or may not enforce those rules or keep them in place, but that I do think that is appropriate in today's day and age to say, hey, we have some of these rules. Do you mind if this is the case? And we've engaged with multiple parents who are like, yeah, no, the games are kids are on video games too much already. We're not gonna let them play at all. And they help enforce while the kids are over there, making sure they're outside, making sure they're doing something else or playing something else when our kids are over at somebody else's house. So I do think it takes involvement, though. It takes intentionality. And if the parents do need to set the expectations of here's how the friendship is going to get built, not around the screen. And you do need to have that conversation with the parents of your kids' friends. Just a couple more here. How can I help my family see how much our screen time is disrupting our daily life? I think this gets back to the first question there of essentially getting everybody on the same page. And what I would do there is just try to have a conversation with your spouse first about it and try to have a heart to heart with them on how it's impacting and just share with them from your experience what's going on and asking them to be a part of the solution and brainstorm part of that solution with you. Uh, One of the things that I've seen work well there is a digital Sabbath and trying to implement that and say, hey, we're essentially going to take a half day or a full day where we just no devices, us as parents too, and try to take a break from those screens and just redevelop our relationships and just give everyone permission to take a break. Now, that does mean you're probably going to want to try to spend time and think of things that you can all do together or have suggested activities and not just have it be a no device day. I have seen parents try to implement this and they didn't stay fully off of their phones and it backfired on them. And the kids were really upset because they said, hey, I thought we weren't on our screens today. Well, I just meant YouTube and video games stuff, but I still need to text everybody. I need to text. And the kids got very upset. So if you're going to put some boundaries on your kids, think about how you can lead by example and putting those boundaries in for yourself. And then with summer coming up, our good rules of the school year go out the window. My thought for anyone coming up on summer, I would have that conversation with your kids. Let them say, hey, what do we want to do this summer? What are our goals? And what do you think is an appropriate amount of time to spend playing video games? And just talk through that with them and think about what they say. And if they put rules in place, or if you feel like they're just answering and saying what you would want them to say based off the rules that you've had previously, talk through that with them and be like, no, but I know that's my rule. What do you think is a good amount of time to play video games? And I think that's where you can point them back towards what is our time here on this planet for? Like, what are we here for? And you can point them back to maybe Ephesians 5:15-17 to talking about making the best use of the time and understanding what the will of the Lord is for our lives. And it's to be a positive member of our community and our society and our family, to love the people around us, to treat them with love and respect, and to be a blessing to them. And if you talk with and you can share with them, hey, whenever anybody gets to the end of their life and they're unfortunately passing away, they always talk about the same thing. They don't talk about what they did and what they experienced. They do those things if they experience with other people. They talk about relationships. They talk about the people that mattered to them and the people that they hope they mattered to. And so I think the real fabric of what you're trying to teach them is how to engage with and build relationships and love other people. So the last question here, how do you have the energy to stick with it? And I just want to encourage you here, if you do believe in God, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you have the same power that rose Jesus Christ from the dead living inside of you. And even if you don't believe that, or you're not sure about it, or curious, like, you were built to be, you were created to be a parent. You have everything that you need to deal with the difficulties of life and the difficulties of parenting and push through them. You do. You 100% you do. And I think you just need to be reminded of that. And from an energy perspective, I would just encourage you, make sure you're not going to screens yourself. And the biggest thing that I've experienced in my own life is so much of energy is stress management. How do you deal with the difficult things of life when they come up? Are you going to your screens to make you feel a little bit and distract you from that? Are you going to food? What are the positive ways that you can deal with the stress in your life? Can you go on a walk and pray and bring those burdens and cast those burdens on God who cares for you? Can you get some exercise? Can you make sure you are eating in a healthy way so you literally fuel your body with the energy that it needs to keep going? But I think a lot of the things in the way that we deal with stress and how we deal with our own energy management are so important for how we are prepared to deal with the consistent stressors and the difficulties of life that are not things that we can necessarily control, when it's the opinions of our kids or the actions of our kids or our spouses or the people that we love. But we have control over our own agency and our own life and our own bodies, and we can give ourselves at least the best chance to have the most energy to do that. So with that, I hope that was helpful for you, Social Rejects. Thank you for having me on again, Gina. And I really enjoyed getting to connect with you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.